Dearly beloved in Jesus Christ, welcome to the reflections of First Lenten Sunday, Year A. Dear friends in Christ, once there was a contractor who built a railway line across a river. And once the project was over, he wanted to try and see how strong is the bridge. So he filled a train with weight double than the usual, and then the train was driven to the middle of the bridge, where the train was kept for a whole day. Then one of the workers asked curiously to the contractor, "Sir, are you trying to break the bridge?" Then the contractor smiled and replied, "I'm not trying to break the bridge, but I'm trying to show to the people that this bridge is not going to break." Similarly, the temptations of Jesus are described in the Gospel not to prove that whether he would sin, but to show to the entire world that he would not sin. From today's liturgy, we are going to meditate upon the nature of temptation and sin in relation with human free will that was given to us in the beginning of the creation. Today's first reading is taken from the book of Genesis, from the creation narrative, where the free will of human being is misused for the first time and was fallen into sin. In the second reading, the letter to the Romans, Saint Paul explains how Jesus justified this misused free will and saved the entire humanity. And in today's gospel passage, the three temptations of Jesus is depicted, where we will clearly understand how beautifully Jesus used the free will as a fully human and fully divine. Let me use the theology of Saint Augustine to explain the divine grace and human free will. Saint Augustine beautifully explains the divine grace and human free will that is given to human beings. Dear friends, just imagine the scene in the Eden Garden. God the Father created human beings, put them in the best place of the world, and given them all that is needed for their survival. And then he also put free will into them. And this free will was misused by our first parents, through which the sin has entered into the human race. Dear friends, Saint Augustine goes on explaining, because of the misuse of the free will of human beings, the sin has come, but God in his divine providence, in his divine grace, again justified us through his only Son, Jesus Christ. That's what Saint Paul explains in today's second reading, letter to the Romans. Letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verses 18, it is clearly told, the sin has entered into the human life through one man. And also, the justification of this sin, the human race, is taken place through one man who is called Jesus Christ. And this justification has happened to the humanity because of divine grace. God did not create sin, and God did not put human beings into temptation, but only what God gave to human beings is free will of choice. He bestowed every human being with a free will to think for himself and act by his thoughts and reasoning power. And using this free will, the first parents have committed sin, through which the entire world is condemned into sin. But again, God in his divine providence and grace justified this sinful human race through his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. So, from today's liturgy, try to understand. The sin has come into this world because of human free will misused. Human beings blame God for all those evil things happening in the society right now. The evils like theft, murder, human trafficking, drug abuse, substance abuse, and all these things. And people blame God, saying, why does God allow all these things to happen in the world? Why can't God at one word can demolish all that is evil? It all happens because God gave us free will of choice. He put in us the reasoning power and allowed us to use that reasoning power and live the human society in a beautiful manner. But what is happening to us? We misuse that reasoning power. We misuse that free will. We misuse the choice of freedom and then make our society an evil place to live. Therefore, meditate and see who is at blame, whether we the human beings who are misusing our free will, or God who gave us the freedom to choose, who gave us the freedom to reason, who gave us the freedom to select the way of life that you want. In today's gospel passage, there are 3 temptations that are depicted very well that came to Jesus in the wilderness. Don't you think Jesus had a choice to fall into their temptations? Obviously, he had a free will to choose, but he chose not to sin. He could have easily made those stones into bread when he was hungry. He could have easily jumped from the pinnacle of the temple, proving that he is a son of God. But he chose not to fall into that temptation. Therefore, understand today, Jesus himself showed to us that we can use our free will, the choice to reason, the choice to select in a beautiful manner and make our lives more beautiful. But are we selecting it? Are we reasoning out? Are we using our free will in a better manner? Often, we make use of our free will for a wrong purpose, which will eventually lead to misery of oneself and misery of the people all living around us. Consequently, make a society an evil one. Remember, Jesus was also like any one of us, but he did not sin. He too had a free will, but he chose not to sin. That's what we hear in letter to the Hebrews chapter 4 verses 15. We have a high priest who is just like any one of us, who can sympathize with all our human weaknesses, but he did not sin. He chose not to sin. And he has put even that willpower in us, not to sin. But often, we in our human weakness choose to sin. From the first Lenten Sunday, let us try to understand the sin has come into this world because human beings misused the free will that is given to them. And the redemption from this misused sin is only the mercy and justification of God, which can happen only through Jesus Christ. Therefore, Lenten season is a time to go back for His divine grace and make our world more better one, choosing good rather than bad, choosing God rather than evil, choosing betterment rather than damnation. Let God bless us all. Have a blessed Sunday.